Okay, Maurice, we're going to take a look at your swing from your lesson the other day. I want to just start off by taking a look at your setup position and the changes that we made to that. On the left, you'll notice before we talked about any instruction, this is how you were setting up to the golf ball, and you'll notice how you have virtually no spinal tilt sort of away from the target. Your spine is sort of leaning towards the target here. You had a lot of weight over here on your left side. I would say you had a lot of your upper mass more over your left side, and your shoulders were sort of aiming slightly to the left of the target line, pointing not square to the target line or square to your stance line, but shoulders pointing to the left. This is one of the reasons why your club path, TrackMan was showing your club path was slightly negative or across the golf ball. So the first thing that we did was work on your setup position just a little bit, and that's represented over here on the right. You'll notice we started, kind of from the ground up. We've got your feet flared out about 20 degrees. We have slid your tailbone forward toward the target just a couple of inches in this fashion, and what that's done is created a little bit, a slight amount of secondary axis tilt. So now your spine is sort of in this direction. And what that's going to do is allow us to, number one, shallow out the downswing plane. Number two, allow the club to come from the inside, on an inside approach. Because as you know, to hit the draw that you want to hit, the ball flight, the right to left curving ball flight, your club path needs to be approaching from the inside. The focus of your first lesson, or sort of our goal as we set out, was to teach you how to control the low point of your swing. We talked a lot about how to do that, and broke those steps down into sort of individual components. So I'll just kind of start from the top. Your swing thought when you were going to put the club into motion was that I wanted you to feel as though your left shoulder was working down towards your left foot in this fashion. What that would do is keep your shoulder, it would steepen your shoulder plane, your shoulder turn. Most players instinctually, when they make a backswing, will just move their left shoulder back in this fashion, and what that does is pulls their upper center of mass back toward their trail leg or over their right foot. So we worked on getting your left shoulder sort of working down, and while the left shoulder was working down in this fashion, I wanted your arms to swing to the inside with your left arm right across your chest. You've done so beautifully here. You really were able to adapt to this motion very, very quickly. I haven't had very many students be able to demonstrate this pattern as quickly as you did. But notice from the ground up, there's a change of flexion in the knees that need to occur in order for this to happen. You'll see your right knee straightening and your left knee flexing. Well, what this does is allows the arms to swing into the inside, the right hip turning high and back, and the hips sort of turn on a slanted angle like this. And what that right hip does is, turning high and back, is it allows your hips to turn more. And because you're able to turn your hips more, you're now able to turn your shoulders more. If you look at this picture, your left arm is just a little past parallel, but you've been able to turn your shoulders more than 90 degrees. So, a player of your caliber, this is going to translate into more distance for you, more compression. You're going to be able to hit the ball much further. So really, really nice job here learning this backswing piece. Once again, I want to kind of reiterate the steps. From the start, it's a feeling of the left shoulder working down, the arm swinging to the inside across your chest, with your right knee straightening and your left knee flexing. Now, I've got PGA Tour player Daniel Summerhays here on the right, who does this motion as well as anyone on tour, and I just kind of want you to look at his motion as well. One thing I want you to notice is I've drawn that yellow box, starting down around your ankles and extending up toward the top of your head. What this yellow box does is it just gives you a point of reference for where your body center of mass is throughout the swing. So you can see you were able to make, you know, a nice full shoulder turn with your head and your center of mass not moving away from the target, sort of in this fashion. So really, really nice job. Remember, as we move our weight back into our trail leg or back into our right side, the low point of our golf swing also goes with it, and our ability to strike the ball before the ground is jeopardized by this weight moving back. So really nice job doing that. Taking a look at Daniel over here on the right, you know, as he puts the club into motion, you'll notice the same thing that was occurring with you is now occurring with him. His weight, his upper center of mass is not moving in this direction. His hips are not moving in this direction, and his head is not moving in this direction. As he gets to the top, you can see not a whole lot has changed. Okay? So really, really awesome job in your first lesson, really working on this. And then what we got into was really how to power the golf swing, you know, on the way down during the change of direction. And this is kind of where you were struggling just a little bit of getting the feeling of how far and how fast you need to push your hips forward. So from the top here, the first move down is the left knee pushing forward, followed by the hips pushing forward, while the upper center stays put. The upper center of mass, your sternum, stays put, and your head sort of stays on a wall here. Remember the demonstration where I put your head up against the pole? Well, that head staying stable, the upper center staying stable, while the lower center, your hips, move forward, is what allows the club to drop to the inside, and the angle of attack is shallowed. That allows the arms to stay perfectly straight and your wrist angles to stay intact. And what I mean by the wrist angles is the nice forward-leaning shaft that you had at address. Let me take you back there. You can see how beautifully you have the shaft leaning forward. We want to return to impact in that same condition. But because you're not pushing your hips far enough and fast enough forward, your elbows tend to separate. Now see the distance between your elbows? This distance has increased versus what it looked like at address, and the reason why is simply because the tailbone is not pushed far enough forward in the downswing. What happens is you just sort of turn back and your left knee straightens. See how your left knee is straightening here? When the left knee straightens too soon, as soon as the left knee straightens and locks, your hips are no longer traveling in a linear fashion toward the target, and the wrist angles will dump. You will lose that nice, right arm flying wedge that we talked about, the flat left wrist and the forward-leaning shaft. Whereas if you take a look at Daniel on the right here, he probably does this better than any player I've ever seen. As the club is still going back, you can see his hips are already starting to push forward. Look how far his hips push in this direction in the downswing. You see how his body mass is now well outside of that box that I've drawn on him? And as he continues down into impact, you can still see a slight bit of flex retained in his left knee. It hasn't fully straightened yet, and you can kind of see how off vertical his legs look. His right leg is really straight. You can see that his legs are off vertical where yours are not far off. They're just simply not far enough forward. But look at the beautiful wrist angles that Daniel has here. He has a ton of forward shaft lean here. And I believe he's hitting a 6-iron or something like that. So relatively the same club. But his right elbow is tucked in here. Handles leaning forward, hips are pushed forward, and from there he's really ready to jump off the ground and extend his spine. So that's the next piece that you and I will be working on. Will be the motion, looking at the motion here on the right of Daniel, is how he jumps through the hit and he raises his belt buckle toward the target, sort of in this direction. He raises it and turns his belt buckle toward the target, and that allows him to keep his shoulder turn going and not stall his pivot and maintain very, very straight arms. So with you through the hit, you can see the club is already here, but your belt buckle is not raising and facing the target until the very end of your golf swing. Okay? Notice how on the right, with Daniel in this position, down here his right foot is sort of banking and rolling in, whereas your right foot is staying down and then up on the toe. Well, this banking of his right foot is occurring because he has pushed his hips forward in this direction. Okay? So the biggest thing that we're going to work on your next lesson is pushing your hips forward, really getting you to jump off the ground and focusing on straight arms. But amazing, amazing job by you, Doctor. Look forward